Awesome. We are live.
Sweet.
Hi everyone. Today I have a very special guest. It's Justin from No Good Comics.
What's up, guys?
Um, Justin, first of all, I know you from Instagram and YouTube, right? Is there any other platform that you are on, or those are your principal ones?
Those two are my main ones. I do have a Twitter account for No Good Comics, but I don't use it enough, and I would like to a little more often. But it's still hard to, just put in different content from different platforms all the time.
Yeah, I'm not a
Hey,
very hey.
what's up, Gabby?
Um, Yay, we have someone.
Woo!
I'm very excited. It's my first live, so I'm just enjoying everything.
Jen, here's something you got to say right off the bat. Every time when you sign on, you got to remind the people, even if they're watching the replay, remind them that they have to hit the like button and to subscribe, just in case if they're new to your channel, maybe you get some new friends joining you, so they want to subscribe to your channel and hit the little bell. I've learned this myself because now that I'm doing more YouTube, I'm always trying to remind people like, hey, hit that like button. It does help the channel. Hit the subscribe and all that other fun stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing. I'll try to. I remember that. I'm very bad with remembering stuff. I'm a more of an last minute improvisation gal, so
Hey, whatever works, whatever works.
but yeah, what I was about to say is that I'm not very into Twitter myself. But I feel that that's a platform that we should explore more, but that's another subject.
Definitely, definitely.
So let's start with today. We are here to meet you as a member of the comics community. I think, well, I mean, in my opinion, you're one of the OG because you've been there longer than me. Like, you're one of the first people that I've followed on Instagram. You also have quite a lot of followers for Instagram. I think you were at 4,000, if I'm not mistaken.
I just crossed 4,000. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. So let's start by trying to know more about yourself. So, who is Justin? How would you describe yourself in one word? That's a very tricky question.
Yeah, I know we were just talking a little bit about it before
Mm,
the show. This is definitely a question that I wanted to put some thought into because sure, and anybody putting thought into this, you're going to come up with several different words and try to, narrow it down if you really had to describe yourself in one word. And so I think the number one thing out of anything is just being optimistic. I'm an optimism at heart. I think that also ties into a lot of other things that I was going to use because I was going to use the word happy initially. I also was going to use the word lucky at one point as I was going through this process of thinking about this question. You can see I really took this question to heart and really thinking
yeah.
about what I wanted to say. But ultimately, I think my perspective on everything, on life, and just the way things happen to me, the way I see things happen. I always happen to look for what positive came out of that, or just what plus side of things that there are. So there's a lot to it. Hey, what's up, Kelly?
Hi, Kelly.
Oh, and you got Mercy in the house too. He's a friend of mine over in Sweden. Good to see you, Andres. Thanks for stopping in. Um, So yeah, so really, I think optimism is the number one thing for me. Just I'm the kind of guy who, um, if you're, I don't know, you're driving on the road and your tire pops, the first thing in my mind is, well, at least it's not raining. Like, it's just something. It's the small things. It's a lot of like little small things that kind of combine. So I would say it was more of that, and just being positive. I consider myself lucky because of what I have in my life right now, and also having the ability to understand that the challenges that I went through at one point in time have brought me to kind of where I am today, both career, relationships, personal life, everything. So to be able to have that mentality to really understand and appreciate challenges that I've gone through and different things that I've had to overcome to get to where I am today. I think the optimistic side of me is what really helped me get through a lot of things. So, yeah, long
But
story short.
honestly,
Yeah.
as someone who watches you, optimistic is a very like it's spot on, I think. Because every time I watch either your video, even your Instagram post or stories, you're always happy. You're
Yep.
always smiling, but there's also this vibe that's like you can feel, like even if it's screen to screen, you know, like I'm watching you from my phone, there's something that's coming out of you. It's something so um I don't want to say zen, but something calm and something like responsive, you know, like you're always happy and calm. And that's something that I remember from, like, even when I started, like I just started following you, I was like, this guy is always happy. This guy is always like smiling and everything. It's very nice. And I
Yeah.
feel that's why it was very important for me to have you on my channel, because I think you're a very important part of the community, because you help
Sure.
so many people. You're always chatting, you're always giving advice, you're passionate, you know, you're always sharing your passion, and that's something that is very important for me. I always talk about how I'm not into like this part of the community that's there for the money, or that's there for um, just like being better than everyone else. I like people who are there for the passion and are there because they love the hobby, right? And that's so you. That's Justin, like from 1 to 10. Like it's always been you that's been there because you're just happy to be there. And that's something fantastic.
Oh man, I really appreciate the words, Jen. It's really nice of you. I laugh at my own sometimes my positivity, as we're talking about here. It messes up things like when I go to talk about a review for a book. I do a show with John's Comics with Kids, and we talk about X-Men books, and we always poke fun at my opinions because I am ultimately always finding the best parts of what I like about any book, even if the book is bad. And even if it's bad, I still give it like a 9 or a 8.5 out of 10. And like, oh, that was like this was so silly and that was dumb. And I'm like, yeah, but this part was really cool and this part really meant something. And like, I just always happen to find, So I always tell people take like my reviews with a grain of salt, because I always just happen to say I love any book I read. I really
you
like.
always figure out how to find the positive in something, like a
Right,
good
right,
thing, you know. I would
totally.
notice that your reviews are always like the sandwich method, so even if you don't like it, you always have one positive thing to say about it. Like
Yep.
it's like in between two bad there's always a good, you know.
Totally. And I think that's, what a review in a way should do, is kind of highlight, the good and the bad. No matter how bad it might have been, there has to have been something, for something positive that you can take out of it. At least that I always try to find. So, but I do appreciate the words. I think that the passion for this hobby is definitely something that helps. I do feel like I'm a very passionate. That was another word too that came to mind, was passion, because I do feel like I have a lot of different passions and interests, and whatever I am into, I'm all in on. So I try my best to really be involved. And it's funny that you say, or you kind of call me like an OG in a way, because I still look at myself as very new. I consider myself a baby to comic books.
No,
So
I'm a baby in comic books. You're not. You're an OG. You've been there longer.
but it's crazy because I mean, to me, I've had my account for a little over 2 years on Instagram, and YouTube. I just started in May of last year.
Yeah, but it's crazy how it exploded. It exploded, right? Like you
Mhm.
got a lot of like not that you got a lot of followers quickly, but people got attached to your channel very quickly. Like you have a personality that's very easy to relate to, you know?
Right. Yeah, it definitely, when one platform grows, kind of helps the other. There's enough negativity going around. Let's leave it to the other people. Yeah, definitely,
Yeah,
Andres.
exactly.
That's funny. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it's cool. I mean, the biggest thing to me is just meeting people and getting to know people along the way, and that's what Instagram has allowed me to do. YouTube has been more of a newer effort of mine, something I've just been wanting to get more involved with. Partially, again, because of community. I've seen so many. I've met. There's a whole YouTube community out there that don't even use Instagram, or they barely use Instagram, which to me is crazy, because I look at Instagram as like the number one place for comic book people, but it's not, it's really not. I mean, there are all these, even I know Facebook has like a group of people that are just Facebook. So I wanted to reach out and extend, a little bit more, get involved with YouTube and the YouTube community. But while doing that, I am trying to pull from both sides. So I try to get my Instagram only friends to get more involved on YouTube, and I try to get my YouTube only friends to get a little more involved on Instagram. And the reason is because there's great people on both sides, and they're both fun platforms. They're both engaging platforms. And if you have the time, and you have the patience for it, I think it's worth it overall, is what it comes down to. So,
but it's working because you remember we talked about this months ago. I started my YouTube channel because of you, and now I'm doing my first live because of you. So it's totally working. You're totally converting people from Instagram to YouTube.
That is so true, so true. I think about the times, our conversations of like novels that we'd write to each other and trying to explain, like, well, here's the good about IGTV, and here's the good about YouTube, and here's, and really comparing the two and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun. I'm really glad to see that you're on here and you're giving this a shot. And it's cool that I'm the first. I appreciate you having me on for this for YouTube, and I hope that your channel continues to grow. I know it will.
Yeah, thank you. I put a lot of effort in it, but I just don't have the time to do it. Like, I don't know how you do it, because you put so much content all the time, and that's something that I admire, because either it's on Instagram or YouTube, there's always something coming out, and I'm like, how does he do it? Like, I can't even manage to take a picture once a week,
Totally. I mean, that has been something I've had to plan over time. So something about my personal life. I am a marketing manager right now for an automotive agency, but really I've done it for a lot of different industries, including the music industry I was tied into for a while, real estate for a little bit, and now automotive stuff. But my main focus has always been marketing, and more so not just any marketing, but social media marketing. So I think that a lot of my things that I've learned is from that. What are your secrets? Yeah, exactly.
I'm not the only one.
Yeah. So it's a lot of it I've learned from my career of trying to schedule things social media wise for the companies that I've worked for or worked with, and so that has helped. Getting content together. The photos that you guys see on Instagram, sometimes, I mean, I'm taking these photos at least the night before. Sometimes I'll take a couple in maybe Monday. I'll have like 5 different books, and I like to participate in some of the hashtagging that goes on in Instagram, right? And I know it's fun, silly stuff, but it's a fun way to kind of interact with some community members and tag other people to say, hey, what do you have? So I like to tie in with that. I used to not. It's funny. I used to not be a fan of the hashtagging at all, but I've grown to love it and get into it because it ties into the community. But what I'll do is I'll look on Monday or Sunday night, and I'll have like 5 books in front of me and say, oh, this would be great for Mutant Monday, or Marvel Monday, or whatever, and Throwdown Tuesday or Top Variant Tuesday. So I'll like take all these photos. Sometimes I'll take a few photos at a time, and then have them kind of ready for that day to come. Because you're right, it's really hard to manage a lot of that stuff. Even the videos, and the videos are way harder than just a picture. But the photos or the videos, I try to balance my time with that. Certainly don't want to let it affect family stuff and things like that. I have really good communication with my girlfriend, where I always tell her, like, hey, if I'm ever overdoing it, if I'm not, if I'm giving too much attention to one thing, or so on and so forth, please let me know. And she's very straightforward with that kind of stuff. So we always talk about things like that. But otherwise, I'm trying my best to kind of get involved. And I have my show on Tuesday. I do a show on Saturday, and then I do some things in between. I just did something on Thursday now. And otherwise, I try to do pre-recorded stuff. And I'll try to do 2 or 3 videos. So like in one day.
You do 2 or 3 videos like at a time? Like on the same night?
I'll record, yeah.
Oh my God.
So but that's how you can do it, where you can, let's say you wanted to release 3 videos a week. It's hard to set up 3 different times, like 3 different days a week, to set your my camera, my books, everything I want to show, and then do it. It's easier to take a Sunday and block out an hour and a half to 2 hours, if that. I mean, you might even be able to do it under that, depending how long the video is, if it's a 10-minute video or 2-minute video, and just record a few things and know that, okay, this I'm going to release on Tuesday. This is a thing I'm going to release on Friday. And this is a thing I'm still not sure if I'm going to share it all. So maybe I'll hold on to it and I'll share it down the road if it makes sense. But you have it. And believe me, I've recorded things where I haven't used it before either, which happens. But so that's ultimately how I go about it, is to keep it ahead of schedule if you can.
You're really organized. Like you follow a strict schedule basically, where like I'm all over the place. I'm gonna say it. I'm all over the place, but you're very organized, and I feel that's the trick. Maybe that's how you succeed.
Well, so I think it's funny because I don't feel like I'm an organized person, but I am organized because of my career. Like I have to be organized in that sense. I have to be organized in my scheduling, because even in my career, I have to prepare posts all the time. I have to come up with new ideas all the time. I have to write copy and come up with new paragraphs and blogs and other things. So I from experience, I don't want to sit there every day and try to write a new blog every day. I'd rather write 5 blogs on one day and then have it for the next 3 months or whatever, things like that. So I do think it's shaped me a little bit for sure. But if you look at my table, I am definitely not organized. So there are some unorganized things in my life for sure.
You need some. You can't be perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
We have Peter Linfield here, who says it makes sense to me that a lot of creators will start out on Instagram. That's what I'm doing for sure, because it seems way less intimidating than recording yourself and editing videos at all and all that. 100%. I was very intimidated with YouTube and videos and everything like that. But I do see people jumping across platform, and it's really inspiring as someone just dipping my toes into the comics Insta community. I feel like it comes with time. Like at some point, you need. I think for me, it was that I needed more challenge. Like Instagram, I handled it, pictures, reviews, whatever. I was like, fine, I got the hang of it. I have followers, whatever. I'm happy. I need something more. And then that's when I started talking with you, Justin, about like, how is it on YouTube? Like, and like trying to figure out my brand and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And I honestly cannot record myself alone in videos. I tried, but they are very bad. So I prefer interview styles because it's just easier for me. Yeah. I feel like I'm someone who needs to like have conversation. I need some to jump on something. But you're good with everything. You can do interviews, you can do videos alone, you can do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with some of the things I've done in the past. I used to be a motivational speaker. I used to talk to anything from, middle school kids, high school kids, to college adults. I've even spoken at some of my previous companies, like holiday parties and events, and spoke to I actually now I do training too for full-on adults on how to use social media and things like that. And so a lot of my previous work and things that I'm currently doing, I think play a big role in that. I am a people person. The motivational speaking was the biggest thing I'd have to say that helped me, because if you can stand in front of 500 7th and 8th graders and talk for an hour and keep their attention for an hour, then you can do anything in life. So when I took that, and now I always think, well, if I can talk in front of, a bunch of kids at a young age who are, going crazy and want to go outside or whatever, I feel like I can do the same anywhere else. So I think I got over the hump of like, I don't know. I mean, I still get nervous. Don't get me wrong. I was nervous going on here. I was telling my girlfriend, I'm like, oh, like I got to think of what word I'm going to use to describe myself. I'm going to go live and I'm going to forget everything I just thought about. My mind's going to go blank, and Jen's going to be like, Justin, just start with your name. What is your name? But yeah, I think a lot of that stuff kind of came with some of the things that I've done throughout my life. But as you're saying, you want to take time. You want to go with what you're comfortable first. And like Peter was saying, like starting out with Instagram is definitely less intimidating to do. And then you just test yourself from there. And if for you, Jen, you're comfortable with having someone having that back and forth conversation, maybe that's your strong suit, or like you said, what you're most comfortable with, then I would say go with it. Like just continue to lean on that. I always say, don't look at other people's platforms and then feel like you have to necessarily do what they do. Not saying that you would look at it and say, I want to be that person, but I do think some people look at other platforms and say, okay, well, if I'm going to create a YouTube channel, everyone else does reviews, they do this, they do that. They talk to, they're on camera by themselves, they're on camera with guests. And that's not necessarily the case. Some people might be opposite of you, where they're better talking alone to a camera than they are talking to another person. So, for them, I would say lean towards that strength. And it's really all comes down to strengths. Hey, there's
Sorry. Boo Boo has joined the conversation.
Hey, Boo Boo. I was hoping that Boo Boo would show up.
Yeah, he's just gonna hang out there. Sorry. He's gonna show his butt. Yeah, and I feel like it comes with the more you get comfortable, because at first on Instagram, I was never showing my face, right? I was only showing pictures of books in my hands and stuff like that. I wasn't showing selfies and stuff like that, but I started gradually showing selfies because I was getting more comfortable with the platform.
Yeah.
And that's just something that builds up, right? Because also I started knowing more people, right? I started like personally knowing people, chatting with people. So it was making me more comfortable to show a little bit more of my personality. And so that's how I feel like it comes with time. But I want to know if you have any tricks about doing videos alone and not like getting lost, like not rambling, not like getting lost in what you're trying to say. Because I feel like when you're alone, it's just you, the camera, and your thoughts, right? So there's nobody to like cut you off. There's nobody to give you another subject or ask you to change the subject or anything. And that's the hardest part for me. So do you have any tips or tricks for that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say to first start out with shorter videos, and obviously you want to plan beforehand with what that topic or subject is that you're going to talk about. Whether, for example, maybe you wanted to show off your new books for the week, that you bought from New Comic Book Day. So you could, set the camera up, hit record, and just take time to talk about each book. A few sentences, like tell yourself, okay, I'm just going to say a few things about it, even if I haven't read it yet. And I can just say, I haven't read it, but I'm looking forward to it. And then you put it down, and you kind of pace yourself by going book to book. If that's too much, do it less, do one book, talk about 2 books, like, keep it short. You don't have to do like 10, 20 or whatever, but whatever's natural to you. And when it comes to topics, if you want to talk about certain topics, I would start by making one video at a time about a certain topic. I know some people will mix things or talk about several topics in one video, but start with one, do a short video of that. And then also just try to, if you're up for editing, if you're okay with editing, talk in segments. So your first segment is, okay, like my first thing I want to talk about is, the comic book community. So boom, here's my 1-minute ideas of my comic book community. Then you pause and say, okay, the second thing I wanted to talk about was this, and you just go into it. But take a minute to like, regroup and pause. Don't feel like you have to just nail it, all in one shot. Especially as you get longer, some of these videos go longer, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It is hard to kind of keep your mind focused on one thing without rambling, but also by hitting your points that you want to make. So if there is a point that you want to make and you're going to forget about it, maybe you write them down and you speak to the camera, then you pause, you look down, you read the next line, you look back at the camera, and then share that next point and go on, so on and so forth. So you're not reading off of a script or anything, but you have your bullet points in front of you. It's like doing a PowerPoint presentation or something like that. But I think ultimately, you just want to I always try to look at it as like I am talking to someone. When I look in the camera, my mind, it is a mental thing where you have to like play with your own head of like, all right, I'm talking to Jimmy. Little Jimmy here is listening and wanting to understand more about my new books that I got. So Jimmy, here's what I got. Here's the first, like, how would I talk to Jimmy if Jimmy was in the room with me right now? You know what I mean? And kind of put it that way. So I don't know. Those are just some things to start off as, but I would say start shorter, videos being shorter, and go from there. If you can master a 1-minute video, you do, 10 of those over the course of a month or something, then you'll be way more comfortable to then do a 2-minute video and then a 5-minute video and then a 10 and so on and so forth. So those are some ideas, at least for when you're starting to get more involved with just recording yourself, I think would be a good start.
No, that's cool tips. Thank you. I feel like I have like an expert, and I'm just like I'm gonna ask him everything because that's way like it's free advice, you
Feel free to
know.
pick my brain on whatever. I like talking about anything. So
But I would like to talk more about comics.
sure.
So I see everything behind you, and also um, I want to know how you started in like with comics. And I
Sure.
feel like you're gonna have very interesting stories. So I want to know everything, how you started.
Okay, so it all started when I was 1 year. No, it's for me. Here's something that people don't know. I was not reading comic books at all until 2.5 years ago. 2.5 years ago is when I first started to read comic books, to actually sit down and read a comic book. I am 32 right now. I was 29 at the time when I first got into comics, when I first discovered my interest and my passion for comics. And that gets a lot of people because if you look at my Instagram account, as you talked about, I do think I may give the vibes that I've been in this, this hobby for 20 years or whatever.
Well, just
And I,
looking at your collection behind you, like that's
well,
20 years worth of
that's,
collection right there.
that is true too. That is totally true too. I was never into collecting them. I was never into buying them or reading them. I did like the characters. I did like the cartoons back in the 90s. I was a fan of that kind of stuff and some of the movies and like the early Spider-Man movies and things like that. I
Yeah.
thought were really cool. But a big thing that people don't know, or people I'm starting to know because I'm starting to share it more, is that my dad used to draw for comics. He used to draw for Marvel and DC, and he's also done a lot of independent work as well in between. And he still actually does some work. He just did a cover for a Marvel Spider-Man book that's about to come out like 3 weeks from now, I think. And this is kind of his first time back doing something with Marvel, so it was kind of cool. But long
It's
story
very
short,
cool.
long story short, he ended up, he got into the industry when he was younger. He was, it was in the 80s. He started drawing for Marvel. He started drawing for DC in the 90s. And basically, for me as a kid, I kind of looked at his work as the family business,
Mm.
and I didn't want anything to really do with the family business. I just thought like, okay, that's work for him. So I'm going to go do other things. I want to play video games. I want to play Pokemon cards. I want to, get into all these other hobbies. So while I was doing that, the other big thing was my parents divorced when I was younger. So when they divorced, my dad stayed in Baltimore, and I moved up to New York and stayed with my mom, and I moved up to New York. So I was young. I was, 3 years old when they divorced, 4 years old. So a lot of my life, I only saw my dad maybe 4 times a year or so. So I didn't really get to see his world all the time. But when he did come, usually it'd be like because New York Comic Con was going on or something like that. So he would bring me, and I would go to the booth with him, and he would do his autograph thing and sketching and all that stuff, and I would just be sitting at the booth.
But that must be like thinking back, that must be a very great experience, right? That now that you understand like the whole vibe to Comic Con and stuff like that, you must be like, wow, I was so lucky to live that experience, right?
Totally. The thing is, I wish I took more advantage of that time when I was younger, because I was around, other artists. He had, friends that he knew that I'm sure, I don't know who I met now, but I'm sure I may have met some people that may be some bigger names nowadays. And just being around that environment and seeing all the fun stuff. I did enjoy myself. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed seeing all the cosplay, and
Yeah.
it was just like a party basically. But I never got into I just never cared to like read the books. I also, to be fair, I also hated reading, just reading in general. I was never great at it. Through middle school and high school, I dreaded projects where I had to read a book. I didn't like any of that. So if I go back into time and I told my, I don't know, my freshman year me that, hey, just so you know, when you're 32 years old, you're going to be reading books for a hobby, I would not believe that. I would laugh and say, no way. Like, I'm not a fan of the idea of reading. But here we are today, and I read books a lot. So, so that's kind of how it, changed. But, anyway, so basically that overall, I got into comics at 29 years old. My boss that I worked with, he was leaving the company that I was with at the time. And he said, hey, man, you want to go get pizza? We'll go out one last time for lunch. I said, sure. We went out, and we both were nerds. We liked a lot of the same stuff, and we talked a lot about it. But again, even though I liked the Marvel movies and stuff like that, I never read the books. He was like, hey, there's a comic book shop right next door to the pizza place. Do you want to go check it out? I said, sure. We'll go in. Sure. So we go in there, and he buys like 3 or 4 books, and he goes to check out, and I walk up with him. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, what? I'm just following you, man. I'm just looking around, just following you. He's like, no, you can't come into a comic book shop and not buy comic books. You got to help the store owner. You got to help the local shop. It's a local business. And I'm like, oh, all right. Okay, sure. Then, so I looked around, and I grabbed the first issue of Infinity Wars from Marvel. It was a Jerry Duggan book. He was a writer on that. I grabbed it because the movies were really big at that time.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I don't know anything about comics, but maybe this ties into the movies. So I grabbed that, and I grabbed The Life of Captain Marvel. That was the other book that was just coming out that day. So I grabbed those 2 books. I said, there, you happy? I'm buying 2 books. He's like, all right, good. So I take these books home, and I'm like, okay, well, I have these books. Why don't I give it a shot? I'll try to read a comic book. So I read Jerry Duggan's Infinity Wars, and it was really fun. And I wasn't expecting what I read. And by the end of it, it leaves you with this huge cliffhanger. And I just thought, wait a sec. So this person just died, and we just get a reveal of this person who's under this hood that you don't know who it is. Now we know who it is. Now what happens? And then it's like, stay tuned for next month's issue. And I'm like, oh, what is that? And I quickly realized that comic books are like how TV shows were when they would come out every Friday or every Tuesday or whatever, like WandaVision or anything else. And I'm a fan of TV shows, so I'm like, oh, I could get into this. Like, I laugh because I didn't realize that. Oh, comic books, they leave you at a cliffhanger. You get into the next issue. That's where you want to keep reading on. Like, I always thought it was just one story and that's it. And maybe some of the older stuff was, Stan Lee and things like that. But, certainly the newer stuff obviously is all, wants to keep you going. It's an episode. An issue's an episode. So once that happened, I told my boss about it. I was all excited. I'm like, oh, this book is great. Like, this happens, and you see Gamora and all these other things happen in the book. And he's like, so what happens? I'm like, it just ended. It ended. So he's like, so what are you gonna do? I was like, I gotta go back. I gotta go get the next issue when it comes out. I just looked at the back of the issue, says it's coming out in 2 weeks. So that's great. So anyways, he moved on, and I ended up going back to that comic book shop. And that guy was there. The guy that was the owner was there, and he's like, "Hey, you're back, man. What are you doing?" And I just told him what I was into, and then it was all downhill from there. That was how I really got.
That's how it starts. That's how they get us.
Yeah, it was. And then you get into all sorts of things. And I know we talk a lot. We've talked about this before, but I've fallen for the whole speculation thing. I've fallen for cover buys. I've fallen for. I shouldn't say fallen necessarily. People are into certain things and they love certain things. So it's not that I feel like saying fallen in is like a negative term, but it's not necessarily. It was just not something that was for me per se. And there's something for everybody in this hobby. So I had to learn. And with everything else that we're talking about, a lot of this stuff comes with time and just figuring out what you want to buy. I looked at this whole shelf. And keep in mind, my friend left, so I didn't really talk to him after that. Or, we kind of stayed in touch, but I didn't really talk to him after that. And I didn't have any friends to talk about comics with. So I didn't know what to do. I just was like, well, I listened to a couple podcasts. I went on YouTube, and then I just started buying some books that I saw people talking about. And then, of course, I never even thought to talk to my dad about it. So I called my dad at some point, and my dad was just like, let me get this straight. You're getting into comic books now?
After a friend told you to, but your dad,
so
your dad was working in it and you didn't realize.
Right. And now the cool thing about it is that ever since then, my dad and I have been able to talk about what we love together. And I have been able to hear stories and share experiences with him that I otherwise would not have had that opportunity. So in a way, full circle, it worked out where now I'm starting to talk to him more about the things that he's always been passionate for and how I'm now passionate. So he's telling me all these crazy stories about back in the day and all these crazy things. And I'm just hearing it for the first time. So in a way, it's created this environment for like a father-son connection to kind of grow more, you know?
Yeah.
So, I'm very lucky for that. And it's cool how that worked out. But anyways, I feel like I'm rambling. I'm sorry. I basically, that's how I got into, essentially into collecting comics.
You're not rambling. You're here to talk, so that's what you're doing. I'm just gonna go quickly in the comments. Kelly said earlier that you're making her want to start filming videos, and I'm telling you, Kelly, it's dangerous to talk to Justin because you will start doing videos. That's how I did.
She already knows, and she is starting to get me to wanting to do reels. Her and Abby. And all you guys are doing reels now, and I start seeing this more, and I'm like,
it's so funny because today I'm gonna post a reel that I did that I filmed yesterday, and it took me so long to do. I hate doing reels, but whatever.
That's great though. I can't wait to see it.
And then we have Mercy Collectibles. It says act tall, think tall, be tall. I love that. That's a very good mantra.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
Kelly, who says again, what a great comic origin story. It is. It's a very great comic origin story.
Thank you. Thanks,
Kelly. We have Candice.
Hey, Candice.
I loved hearing your story. Hi. Justin has an amazing story. That's why I really wanted him to talk about it.
Hello.
So we talked a little bit about your origin, and I just want to mention also that everyone who's listening and thinks that his comics origin story is fantastic, that you are you're doing a video today with your dad on your channel.
Yeah.
So
it's at 2:00 today Eastern time. And it's over on my channel. It is my Comic Collector Origins show that I know you're familiar with because you were a guest on my show a few months ago. And so the show itself is to interview people from the community and get to know kind of what I'm sharing here today. I like to pick other people's brains and ask them about how they got into it. So very, similar in what we're talking about today. But what I'm doing first, today is a very special day, is I'm going to be interviewing my dad. So yeah, that will be that'll be a treat. That'll be a lot of fun. And that starts at 2:00 Eastern time. And basically want to hear his origin story, and not so much about collecting comics, but drawing comics and how he got into the art side of things.
Like part of the industry, like directly part of it, like creating stuff. That's very cool. It's actually, I'm very intrigued. I'm really excited to watch your show today because that's gonna be something like very, very new. But can you also share what you do on your channel? You said you are doing comic collectors origins videos. But what else? What can we find? Like, why should we follow you either on Instagram or YouTube? What's your special, like your star power,
This is my star power. So I think that, ultimately, yes, I have a couple shows that I do on my YouTube channel. One being the origin story. And the reason I started the origins show is because my biggest thing with this whole hobby now, more so than reading, I think. I mean, it's to that, or at least to that level. As much as I enjoy the reading, I enjoy the community. And so I created this show because it was a way for me to talk to community members, and not just talk, but get details and really understand this person that I'm talking to, where they come from, what their background is. Even more, and we don't even just talk about comics. We talk about non-comic related things as well. And it's just a cool way to hang out and get to know that person, to where now, if Jen, if I'm ever in your area in Canada and I'm, visiting an LCS near you, I'm going to hit you up and say, hey, we got to meet up, or if I see you walking down the street, I would see you and say hi, so it allows me to have these relationships. So I created that show for that. If you guys are into the community, if you guys like you know, the idea that you're meeting people and you're looking to meet new people and you're looking to get to know more people more often, check it out. Check out the show, because that's what I, and ultimately be on the show. I invite anybody. Anyone's welcome to be on the show at some point in time, and be a guest, because that's what this is about. It's not about me. It's not about a book or anything specific. It's just about the community. So that's my number one show that I love to share and talk about, and would say if you are looking for some cool content, that would be the highlight. The other thing, I have several shows, but the other things I do an X-Men show with my friend John from John's Comics with Kids. And if you like X-Men, I highly recommend you guys swinging by. It's every Tuesday at 9. And we talk about X-Men. We have these omnibus. I have one here. Where we break down issues from this book, and well, this is volume 3, but we're on volume 1 now, and we were inspired because we both got an omnibus for the first time. Do you own an omnibus, Jen?
Yes, I do. I have iZombie.
Okay.
And I'm really into Terry Moore lately, but he has, I don't know if you know him, but like all of his Strangers in Paradise, Rachel Rising, so it's very long series. So I love to read him in omnibus. So I have Rachel Rising, I have Mother Girl, I have a bunch of his omnibus. But I'm not usually into omnibus because it's usually like very heavy, and like flipping the pages and stuff. I don't like that experience, but for long series, I'll do it. I'll read omnibus.
It's funny that you bring that up, because I'm not. I mean, when I got this is so I own 3 omnibus in total, and I don't plan to own many more. I plan to just buy these X-Men ones, and that's it. But I bought this first X-Men one because it was coming out, and I just saw it was cool, and I connected with John, and John's like, "Hey, this is my first omnibus too." I was like, "Oh man, like that'd be so cool." We like started a show because we would always talk about X-Men, and he's like, "You want to we could break down issues of the book," and I'm like, "All right." So that's kind of how that started. But I'm not necessarily a fan of omnibus. I read digitally, actually, if anything.
Oh yeah, it's true. You're a digital guy.
I'm a hardcore digital guy for sure. And not to say I still believe in wanting to own the books as well, and I wouldn't want that to go away because I know how important that is to the industry. But I definitely like to buy on digital if I can as well. But anyway, so I have that show. I do a tag team Thursday with a few friends of mine, including John, where we take turns to jump on each other's channel 15 minutes. So my friend Rod, he goes first at 6:30 on Thursday, and he basically does his little show, a 15-minute thing where he talks about the books that he picked up from Wednesday, the day after New Comic Book Day. And then after the 15 minutes, everybody that's in the chat, we tell everybody, hey, swing by the next channel, and everybody goes to John, and John has a pre-recorded video that he does. And then after that, he says, jump over to Tony and Old Wolf 65, and he does his. And then we have like a guest. We just had a guest recently, Dan from Comic Chop News on Instagram. We just had him, and he did his show and just talked about his things, and then I go. So it's a lot of fun. Tag team Thursday, 15-minute intervals. If you get a chance to only swing by 1 or 2, that's okay too. But if you can catch, sit throughout all of them. Kelly was there for mine. She said she's going to try to catch everybody's next time. But it's another good way to get involved with the community, and we invite people on that too. So I think all in all, if you're looking for, I can't sell myself. I feel like if you say why should people follow me or why should they look for me? If you're looking to just talk comics, that's the answer. Ultimately, you want to talk comics, you want to talk about the comic book community, you want to get to know each other. That's why I would say you should follow me. I like to post books. I like to post new things that I buy. I love artwork, the idea of artwork. I also like to tell stories about the books that I've just purchased or bought or got as a gift or whatever. That's half of it for me. I just like telling stories about the books that I got, not about the story necessarily, but just a story, how I acquired it, things like that. So if you're into that, if you're into just like checking out cool books, then yeah, that would be a great reason to follow me.
And just to clarify, because you know me, you're a Marvel, DC, indie. Who are you? What type of guy are you?
Yeah, so as I was saying earlier, I've only been in this hobby for about 2.5 years. So when I say I am something, or if I define myself as something, I quickly learned that it just changes and grows so fast because I'm so young in this hobby. So I will say ultimately I lean towards Marvel for sure. Marvel's been my number one thing pretty much since I started. A lot of it has to do with the movies. And then a
Hmm.
lot of it has to do with the characters. I just enjoy a lot of certain characters that I've read about. But I'm starting to learn more DC. There are some DC characters that I like the idea of. I just haven't had the time to read them because there's just not enough time in the day. But even now, 2021, I've decided I'm going to start reading some DC. So I started reading more DC. Also, I don't know if you noticed this, Jen, but I am all over indie titles, especially this year. So if anything,
Very proud of you.
Indie has been my jam. It has totally been my jam. I am loving the idea of a new book coming out, an issue number one that I've never heard of before, maybe even by a new writer I've never heard from before, or new creator or artist, and just giving it a shot and just taking it in. And then the other cool thing is to know that everyone else is on my level when it comes to their knowledge on this book. It's not like Batman where
Yeah,
I don't know enough about Batman. And so if I jump into a conversation about Batman, I just feel like I'm lost and I don't
lost
know.
and confused.
Yeah, like I can't carry my own conversation about it. And even Marvel, certain characters. So, with talking about a brand new book, like I'm reading Scout's Honor right now, and by David Pepos. And that
Hmm.
book, it's from Aftershock. It's only 2 issues in, and I just feel like I want to talk more and more and more about it because it's been so great from what I've read so far, and I'm really enjoying it. And for anyone else, it's like, oh, you haven't read it? Well, guess what? It's only 2 issues in, so you could jump in right now and just,
Quickly, yeah.
yeah, you don't have to read omnibus, in order to get caught up. And I think you pointed that out when I had you on my show on some of the pluses of the indie stuff. So I do like that aspect. So yeah, I mean, I'm Marvel at heart right now. I think I just the characters and how long they've been there. But I am certainly young at learning more about indie stuff and even DC stuff and everything else that's out there. So I kind of leave it at that. I'm open to everything.
Do you notice a difference when you read indie comics versus Marvel comics in terms of like, I don't know, either the vibe, the philosophy behind it, because different publishers mean different like vibes for me. So do you notice anything different or something that you dislike or something that you really like about either one or the other?
So I feel like I can't talk too much to it because I again just don't have enough experience under my belt with how many books I've read. If you laid out the number of books that I've actually read, I just feel like it's not a lot. And so
Mm-hmm.
because of that, to me, and I'm reading them for the first time, there's not many books I've reread yet. I just haven't gotten to that point just because of time and everything. So I can't necessarily say or base any decision off of that. I know what you're saying, and what you're pointing at or pointing out. Like, it's just hard. It's just hard for me to I don't know how to put it, but I just feel like I haven't read enough yet.
Yeah, I totally understand. It's a tricky question because I already have an opinion about it, and I'm just like everyone needs to have an opinion about it.
Totally. Well, and this goes back to like my reviews and stuff, right? Like I definitely play kind of the middle ground on a lot of this stuff. As a big part of it is because I'm still learning it, and so I try not to put anything too high or too low, just from my own experience, until I can.
It's just funny because you say you're a beginner, you say you're new to it, but you don't. It doesn't seem like it, and maybe because I don't care. But you're still reading, right? You're still enjoying the hobby. You're still into it. You're still participating, and you're still collecting and reading. So even if you are new, you still have that experience as a reader, and your opinion is very important. And I just want to mention this because
Yeah.
sometimes people are gonna say, "Oh, like." He's not in the hobby for, I mean, I've lived this, like she's not in the hobby for that long, she mustn't, she probably doesn't know what she's talking about, but it's not true. Like, you read a comic, you have an opinion about it, that's your experience, that's something very important for me. like to mention that if no matter how long you've been into it, your opinion is still important. Whether it's been 15 years or 2 years, it's still very important, you know?
Totally. No, you're right, and you're absolutely right. And I, you know, I mean, I guess even just reading one book and then having an opinion on it is a fair assessment or a fair, you know, thought process on it. I guess what I'm trying to say though is that I don't have a clear enough distinguish between certain writers, even just certain writers. Even if you took 5 different indie writers and lay them out, I wouldn't see enough of a. I mean, I would read the story and embrace the story, but if there was some deeper meaning behind it, I wouldn't say I necessarily picked up certain things or would understand that reader and where that reader stands on certain things per se. I'm just reading it and grabbing the story for the first time.
You're just enjoying the story. You're just enjoying the medium and what it is about. You don't analyze everything.
Right. Just to a degree, I haven't really dove into yet. Now I know I've heard things. I try to do better research for myself, and that's something I know you've talked a lot about. And I'm a strong believer in the idea of research for no matter what you do or what you buy or what you are into. So I have been trying to do better with that as well in terms of researching the background and understanding, you know, like you're saying, the artists or the creators and where they stand. I am trying to be more aware or more conscious of those facts too. So
that's very cool. That's very cool. It's just sometimes I feel it's very difficult to know everything about everyone, you know, but it's nice to see people like you who are willing to do the research and to just learn and just be there to learn and have new information about everything, right? That's why I appreciate you so much, because you're open to everything. You know, you're never closed-minded. You never put like a barrier between somebody else's opinion, right? You always try to open yourself to it and do research and learn, and that's something fantastic, and that's why we need more people like you in the community, right?
I appreciate it. Yeah, you know, it's funny. When I think about comic books, and now we talk about the different publishers and even just different artists and creators. I look a lot. I used to be in the music industry. That was where I started off after high school. I was very passionate about music. I wanted to write music. I wanted to be a producer. I wanted to be an engineer, a writer, you know, singer, songwriter, all that stuff. So with that, I was always into all genres of music. If we just talk about being a fan of music, I was always a big fan of all music. And my argument or my debate to that, because there were people that I used to work at a store. I used to work at a FYE. It was called FYE. I think there's still some around. It's a CD and DVD store. I worked there for years after high school, and I would get into these conversations with people, you know, customers or even people I worked with, where I would make recommendations or say, hey, do you like this type? You know, check out this album or this artist, and they would say something like, ugh, I can't stand rap. Or I can't stand country music. Can't get into country music. And my reaction to no matter what it was always really why, or what was it about that you didn't like? And they would a lot of people would just dismiss the idea of a certain genre. Oh, I can't listen to jazz. Jazz is just so boring.
Kind of like me dismissing Marvel and DC.
Well, but look. So hear me out. So. They would dismiss these, but with that, I would talk about. I would try to point out that there are some really good music within each genre, and I strongly feel, I have always felt, that there's great music in every genre. No matter what genre you're into, I promise you, you can find good music amongst that. So in my eyes, I would never want to dismiss a genre just knowing that that there's good music out there for that genre that I dismissed. So that's kind of where I guess the open-mindedness of that comes from. Now that's not to say if there's a certain musician that is a jerk, or is racist or something like that, I certainly would not want to support that individual. But it doesn't mean that the whole genre is bad because of that one individual. So I try to keep my perspective of that when it comes to certain things. And how this all relates, as I'm talking about music, how it all relates to comic books is I always would encourage people to try any book, no matter the publisher. I almost would say remove the publisher out of your mind for a second, because at the end of the day, Jen, if I told you that, I mean, with the relationship we have, right, the friendship that we have, and the respect that we have for each other, if I said, Jen, I'm so excited, I am going to be a writer. I'm going to start writing comic books. And you're going to say, great, Justin, that's awesome. Congratulations. Good luck. And then a week later, I come to you and I say, Jen, you would not believe it, but Marvel just reached out to me. Disney just reached out to me. And they said, we want you to be the next writer for Amazing Spider-Man. And I would just be at awe, and my jaw would drop. And if I knew that I mean, I guess I would ask you, Jen, would you read my book if I were to go ahead and write Spider-Man? If I had a book out, as a friend to a friend, and the relationship that we have and the respect that we have for each other. And I said to you, Jen, I just did this really cool thing. Would you check it out? Would you not, because it's from Marvel?
No, I would definitely check it out. And that's the thing, I talk a lot against Marvel and DC, and I know that I have this reputation of like hating them, but I actually have some titles that I love about them, like Mr. Miracle. That's a very big favorite of mine. It's from DC. Cool. I also read Harleen from DC. I've read a couple of things from Marvel that I appreciated too. It's just because the thing is that Marvel and DC mostly publish superhero genre, right? Yeah. That's their brand. Sure. And superhero is not what I like to read. But when they publish stuff outside of that genre, like Mr. Miracle, it's still superhero, but it's not the classic superhero thing. It's a lot of, they talk about mental health. It's very different, a very different vibe. And I really like that. So when they get out of that mold, I actually appreciate some of their titles. And I'm not close to it. Like I'm going to read Ryan from the Comic Lounge recommended a bunch of comics to me, and I'm going to read them, even if they're from Marvel and DC. I'm going to read them because Ryan said that I would appreciate them because they are more focused onto the character development rather than superhero genre, right? So it's all about like recognizing your taste and recognizing what you like. And I know that I'm bad, that I always say that I hate them, but I don't hate them for everything that they do. It's like specific things that makes me cringe, but for sure, like I don't believe that you should cancel a whole brand or a whole publisher just because of one little thing that they're doing or that you don't appreciate about them,
Right. Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think that I think sorry, I was just looking at Steve's comment before. Being open-minded, you must be open. Very true.
Yeah, we can go into there's a bunch
sorry,
of
I just glanced at one and now my mind.
So if we go back, Peter, hello Peter, again. I'll definitely be checking out the community focused show. I've been a big comic reader for 8 years or so, but I have only really been delving into the online community in the past year or two. You're really welcome to follow Justin. I think you would really like him, especially his community focused show. And then Candice said, I own the very small omnibus. I have the original Buffy the Vampire series.
Buffy.
Yeah, classic. I don't love the Omni experience either. That's I totally agree. The Invisibles nearly killed me with Inconceivable Heft. And then Kelly said that Rachel Rising is a great series. I totally agree. I read the entire omnibus in one day. That's like a lot of pages in one day. And we have a new viewer.
Oh, that's Hip Hop's and Me. That's Steve over at Team Nerd Herd. What's up, Steve?
Hello, Steve. Welcome. And Peter, who said, I'm all about the open-mindedness about comics. There are so many incredible artists and stories that I would never have experienced if I just stayed in one lane. Totally true. It's all about exploring and discovering new titles.
Yep.
And Steve said also, definitely love to mix it up for sure. Oh, we have Sparks Comics
Hey,
who just joined us. Hey!
what's up, Sparks?
Yes, I love when people join and say hi. That's my favorite thing about doing live.
Heck yeah.
Oh, and we have Candice to reply them. It's worth being open-minded instead of generalizing. You never know what you'll end up enjoying, and that's very, very true, Candice.
Yep. Very cool. What I wanted to say before was you mentioned. Oh man, I lost my train of thought again. Well, it was one of your questions that you had sent me earlier. That goes into this in saying what if there was a book or if there was a title that was from Marvel or DC, what would I recommend to you, and how would I kind of check it out? So I totally get what you were saying before. This is what I want to say too. I remember now. I totally get the superheroes are not your thing, or just the idea of the good versus bad, and good must defeat evil. That story arc certainly can get old for sure. And I totally get it. If the whole capes and masks is not your thing, or you're just not into it right now, totally understandable. And that's what's great about comics. It's what's great about just comics in general, is that there's a little bit of something for everybody. With that being said, if there was a book that I was going to recommend for you, have you ever read God Loves, Man Kills by Chris Claremont?
I've never read it, but I heard about it. Actually, let me put it in my wish list. I'm going to add it.
So I would recommend you checking that out, because and really anything. I mean, that's a very powerful story. It also is very heavy into what we're dealing with in today's society, with racial discrimination, certain religious topics, and things like that as well. It's very powerful, and it really, while the X-Men are kind of viewed as these heroes, it is in no way just as simple as saying it's a superhero book.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what you were saying about Mr. Miracle and even like the Visions and things like that. Some of those other 12-issue series that have been really powerful, and they really do hit home in other ways. I love those kinds of stories. I love those kinds of books. I think that you would appreciate at least this book that I'm recommending. You would appreciate the topics that it discusses and that it covers. X-Men as a whole is something that I think is why I gravitated towards X-Men, is because it's not all necessarily superheroes and villains. Even the X-Men themselves, the mutants themselves, go back and forth between being considered a good guy or a bad guy based on their agenda or their goals or their morals, and they change. And a lot of that, I feel, really replicates the world in a way, and even just ourselves, how we can be all for one thing and then maybe against something else, and slowly we grow and we change and we learn. I feel like the X-Men bring that to the table. And it's not just someone saving someone else, but yes, some of them do wear capes to some degree, or they have fancy outfits and things, but it doesn't necessarily go to the typical superheroes and villains. And so I think that's why I like X-Men so much. I think that's why I consider myself an X-Men guy now, or at least right now, again, being very new to it. Even X-Men. Some people will look at my channel or my Instagram and say, this guy is like the X-Men master, or he just knows everything about X-Men. And that is not true at all. I just picked up X-Men back in March of this past year. So that's how new I am to X-Men. Other than, I've watched the movies and I watched the cartoons in the 90s and things like that. But I just read God Loves, Man Kills for the first time. That was I literally just like 2 days ago, I just read it for the first time. And as you said, like, I've heard a lot of great things. A lot of people recommended it to me. And so I'm glad that I read it now, because it definitely is a very powerful story that covers a lot of things that are what we're dealing with in today's society.
That's very cool. I added it on I have a paper on my desk where I write like my wish list comics. So cool. When I'm online shopping, I know what to get. So I just added to it. And I just want to mention, though, that although I talk a lot like against Marvel and DC, it's not just necessarily the stories that they publish. It's more, I'm not into always publishing the same things, you know, like we've talked about this on your channel, but like there's like 10,000 Batman stories. Like, why not a new superhero? You know, like I'm just, for me, it's just like looking at the shelf and seeing 10,000 Batman stories. I'm just like, meh, you know?
And here's the thing with that. And this is what I've, at least from my experience, what I've witnessed within the fans is that if a publisher like Marvel or DC, the big two, if one of them goes and changes something, if they go and
war.
make it's war, and it's war
It's
for
war.
the fans, right? The fans, not all fans, but there are fans out there who want something a very specific way. Now, there are other fans out there who are looking for change and are looking for growth. And in many ways, it's like that for everything else in our world, in looking, you know, in these two opposites. Yeah. And so depending on who, you know, what you're into and what your interests are, you will fall under one of these two buckets. And at the end of the day, I always try to remind myself, like, you know, Marvel and DC, they need, as a business, they are going to try to do what they think is best for their business, and what is going to sell at the end of the day. And yes, it's sad because it is all money driven. It's all money driven. And that's just how that works, because that's just how the business works.
Yeah.
But I always think, or I always consider that, okay, they, even now with like Future State, I've heard so many mixed feelings about Future State stuff, with having a new Wonder Woman or a new Batman who is a different color and all this other stuff. Like, some people are appreciating it, but there are others who really don't like it or whatever. And so Marvel, again, trying to play, you know, sure, they're trying to play both sides. Ultimately, though, they are trying to play towards what they think is the best for their business.
Yeah, that brings more money in. But that's why I leave Marvel and DC to the fans who love their, like, not original comics, but their classic, maybe. I always consider myself leaving the big two to the ones who love classics, because I'm more into I'm more a fan who loves new and different, fresh stuff, you know, like I love being challenged and I love being surprised. So that's why I lean towards more indie comics. But like, I don't hate them. I know I say I hate them a lot, but I don't really hate them deep down. You know, I'm not into them. Like I said, I'm very passionate. So sometimes I just say things, you know.
No. And it's I mean, I get it when you say that. I mean, I certainly understand where what you mean when you say you hate, or as obviously a joke, kind of a joking gesture. But it's, you know, I always just try to think like these brands are being guided by the fans at the end of the day. And so if you don't like what the brands are doing, shouldn't you also consider that the problem might be the fans? You know, to some degree. And again, not all fans, and not, you know, everybody. There's two sides to this, of course. But I always think about that. Man, I don't like that DC just did this move, or that they just made, you know, or yeah, I mean, just a character that's already been made, and they changed that dramatically. And I just think that,
or just the Wonder Woman cover that was made by, what's her name? I have it here. You know, that cover, who they decided to change it up a little bit, this one, and it brought so much hate. I'm just like, it's the same Wonder Woman, like the story inside is the same, it's just the cover. Like, come on, people.
right and that's the fans, right? At the end of the day, that's, I mean, if anything, DC, it was DC's idea to put that out there. They hired someone that wanted to put that out there, so it's like, kudos to them. They wanted to do this, and then they got this, you know, negative feedback. So now, of course, maybe DC now says, okay, guys, we pissed everybody off. Now we want them to keep buying, so we have to go back to what they want. You know, like, it sucks because that's what they're driven by money. They have to. They are business. They want to stay afloat, and especially obviously with pandemic and stuff like that. But so it is hard to think of it in those two terms. But I do ultimately blame ourselves. I mean, you know, the fans, you know, for what the outcomes we get from Marvel and DC. But I totally get what you're saying too, and I know it's in joking gesture when you say you hate them.
Let's just go in the comments real quickly. I saw a bunch of good ones. So we have Steve here who says, I have God Loves Men Kills for a year or so, but I never got to reading it. Gonna do that very soon.
Oh man,
We should buddy read it because I'm sure I'm gonna read it soon too.
there you go.
Oh yeah, and then we have Spark Comics. He recommended Strange Academy to me a couple weeks ago, I think, and I definitely will read it. I just need to purchase it first, and that's something on my to-do list. But yeah, I heard great things about Strange Academy.
Yep.
And then Steve again here who says, I love indie comics because they are mostly finished stories while DC and Marvel just go on and on with no real consequences in the end. They go back to status quo for a year or so. That was actually one of the things I discussed with Justin when I was a guest on his channel.
Yep.
We have Mercy Collectibles. I wouldn't say it's that black and white either. At some point, Spider-Man was new and looked that strange. Yeah, I know. That's true. And yeah, everyone is loving that cover from Wonder Woman. I know everyone loves that cover, but on Twitter it was horrible.
Yeah,
people were saying so much mean things about it. People that got upset about that are just beyond me. Me too. I don't understand them.
Yep.
I want to ask you, Justin, because you are so positive about everything, and with the conversation we just had, I want to ask you my favorite question. I wrote it down. Let me just pull it up. If you had a magic wand, what would you like to change about the industry?
So this was great. I wanted to really put thought into this because now look, I know there are a lot of problems within the industry, just like there are in every industry. But if there was something that I, as a fan, and as a fan who appreciates and really enjoys the community of other fans that like comics and have passion for what we have passion for, one of the things that I thought about, I thought about this a while ago, back when like the Marvel, or I guess within 2 years ago, I think when Endgame came out for Marvel, the film, I wish that DC and Marvel specifically, and because they have such a bigger platform than the indies, I wish that, or if I could change it, I would change that these two platforms work harder or be better at promoting comic books, actual comic books. And I say that because I go to a theater, I watch Endgame for the first time. I was blown away. I love it. Obviously, a lot of fans that are there, they go see it. They love it. But, after that first day, that first week, that first month that the movie comes out, it starts to slow down. Other people who are not as big of fans of comics, they go check it out later because they want to stay away from the crowds or whatever. They watch the movie, and then that's it. And then they move on with their lives. And in my mind, I'm thinking, such a good platform to tell all those people in that theater, hey, by the way, did you know that these stories came from comic books? Did you know that you could buy these comics? Sure, you want to be a little salesy about it, a little businessy about it? Fine. Did you know you could go buy this? You could go sign up for our Marvel Unlimited app right now or something. If you want to add that in, that's fine. But I do think a very powerful thing to do would be to just tell more people about comics and remind them that there are so many great books out there, and that even if if it wasn't for you, if this movie wasn't for you, you probably wouldn't want the comics. But to just say like, hey, remember, like there are other genres of comics out there and things like that. I don't know. I would want to see more promotion in that, because ultimately I want to see the comic book community, and I know I don't know everybody, but I want to see the community grow. I just want to see more people, both young and old, get into the hobby, because it's just great. I think it's such a great hobby, and it's so much fun. And reading stories that hit home to you personally, being able to talk to other people in the community about those stories, and then having connections and friendships based on that, all that is positive and plus. So that would be one of my biggest, and as I said, there are a lot of problems with the industry as well. And I didn't want to get too in depth with everything, but that was something that always stuck out to me, is that why don't these big movies and these DC and Marvel highlight more of one of their things that originated from? I mean, if the movies would never be around, if the comics never existed, so why not talk about it? Have a little segment in the beginning, where you have, like, I don't know, some of the executives or somebody come talk about it a little more, just to say, hey.
I could never agree with you more. Like, this is 100% spot on, and not just Marvel and DC, but how many times did I watch a TV show or a movie and I realized, like, months later it was based on the comics? I was like,
yeah,
what? Like, it's written like in small print at the beginning, like you can't even see it, inspired by da 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 da. Like, put it big, like, so people can notice, so people can know that it's inspired by a comic book, even if it's not like, even if it's not a good like, for example, Lock and Key, right? The TV show and the comic are really different, but it's still inspired by the comic book. So put it there, put it there, like you said.
Yeah, and it
publicity.
also helps the publicity of those creators, the ones who initially put this together, and everything else about just again, yeah, I spot on with what you're saying. I think it can open up doors for people. I think comics, I've heard so many powerful stories about comics from people in the community on how it saved their lives, about how it changed their lives, the stories that they read, no matter who, what books they read. And to know that it has that kind of power, that kind of change, that if you just give it that chance. And I just think of a lot of people in the world right now who maybe could use a fun story, or a positive story, or just a powerful story that hits home in a way that makes you think a certain way. So I think, again, with all the money and everything else that they have going for them, Marvel and DC especially, can't they take 2 minutes in front of the movie, or even at the end of the movie, somewhere in the movie, to just say, by the way, this was a comic book. Do you know about comic books? No? Maybe you should check them out. You might like them. Yeah,
100%. That would be so much. I don't know. It would help to reach out with a different audience too, and help to just increase, because I heard, maybe not now, but I heard people say that comic books will be, like, the hobby of comic books will be dying at some point, like, that's something that we keep hearing and hearing and hearing, even if it's not true or whatever. I'm not sure how it works, but it's still something that people think, like, oh, comic books are still around. Like, I didn't know that comic books were still around. They think that comic books stopped in 1980, but it's still very much around,
Totally.
And that's just something we should promote more.
Yep, absolutely agree.
Let's see what people are saying in our comments. Cross-selling for sure here. That's one way to put it. And then we have, I would change that they make too many reboots. That's why indie comics are refreshing once in a while. I don't think they're investment books, but just good to read. Couldn't agree. Like, I agree with this. And then we have ourselves more buzz and more fans, 100%. And that's what we should focus more on. Steve is totally with you, Justin. Kelly thinks it's a great answer. We have a cool answer here. Cross-selling, yes, but also inspiring. Imagine being a kid seeing this and tell them they could write comics, and if they are good enough, end up on the big screen. Yes, totally. I think, but also, like, the job of working in comics is not, like, we don't hear that often, like a kid who wants to write or be an artist for comic books, right? It's not something we see often,
right?
That's why I really love Into the Spider-Verse, because they really based the look of the films on comics. Very true. That's the one with agreed, Steve, that was a cool touch in that movie. That's the one with Miles Morales, right? The one that I really love that one.
It was great. It's a great movie.
Yeah, my boyfriend actually loved it too. Like, he said exactly the same thing, that he loved how they based the look of the film in like as a comic book. That was very cool and interesting to do.
Yep.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Justin, for that amazing answer. It's always, I feel like, a tricky question, but it's nice because you're always so positive. I was, like, happy to challenge you to find something like to
Totally.
change, you know?
Absolutely. No, and you did. It definitely, I wanted to think about it. So it was good.
I think we answered all of the questions I had prepared for you. Do you have anything that you want to add? Any important information that you would like to share with everyone, either about your account, about your passion, about your hobby, about your comics love, anything?
Uh, if you're new or newer to this hobby, I would say embrace the community. That I can't say enough of. I encourage people, especially because when I was new, 2.5 years ago, just starting my Instagram account, I had no idea that there was a community to this hobby. I mean, I just never, I didn't cross my mind. I just thought, well, let me put together an Instagram account because I have some cool artwork and cool comic books. I'll take pictures and maybe some people will like it. You know, who knows? I remember telling my girlfriend, like,
Who knows?
I told my girlfriend, like, oh, when I first started, I said, if I could get 100 followers by next year, by a full year, then that'll just be awesome. And she's like, oh, you'll get that. You'll definitely get that. I'm like, I know. I'm like, look, I don't want to get into numbers. It's not that important, but it would just be cool if I had 100 followers by the end of a full year. And I think I had 100 in within a month or two. But it just hit me at that point when I started seeing the same faces, the same people liking my pictures, adding me, direct messaging me and talking to me about things. And I started seeing these faces over and over again. That's when I started to realize, and other people too would recommend other people and tell me about how they're on some other show or channel or something. All that stuff was just like so cool. So if I knew about this even earlier, before I was in comics, maybe I would have gotten into comics even earlier than that. Just because, again, I'm a people person. I like to build on relationships. I like to get to know people, and so this has just been a great platform to be able to do something like that and to meet people like I see in the chat, people like yourself, Jen. I've made so many great friends through this. So one thing to just leave off, or my main thing to anybody watching this now, anybody in the chat or the replay, is to just join in on conversations, join in on topics, join in on, as you said, Jen, sharing your opinion, putting yourself out there in a way that you're comfortable, but a little out of your comfort zone is a good thing too, because ultimately I think that what you'll discover is that there are a lot of other people that are like you, that have similar passions to you, that are into similar things as you, and that just makes life better when you can talk and express certain things to those who really share certain feelings, or even if they're a little opposite of you, to be able to just talk about those things and recommend things. So my biggest thing I'd always say to anybody is to spread the love for the community. And no matter what aspect you're into it, we all have our different reasons for why we're in this comic book hobby. I still recommend talking with people, messaging people, watching people's shows, and hopefully they return the favor. But really don't judge a book by its cover, I guess is the big thing when it comes to the community. Is there are some great people in this community, and not everybody, you might not see it right away, or you might not recognize it right off the bat, but giving time and everything else, as we talked about before, anything needs time. Just explore the community. That's my big thing to leave off.
And don't be shy. I feel like don't be shy to say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I like that. I like that comic book too," or "I think you should read that." Like, don't be shy to share, because that's how you connect with people, and that's
Yep.
how like I started connecting with Justin, Kelly in the comment section too. Like, that's just how we connect with each other. That's very great advice. Let's see. We have Peter here who said. To piggyback on your advice to new readers, I'd say use your library. This hobby gets expensive damn fast. There are a lot of free books, physical and digital, out there to experiment risk-free. And that's true. Justin is a full-time digital reader.
Yeah, pretty much. That's great advice.
I would like to just end to when you said share the love, and what comic accounts should we follow, either on YouTube or Instagram? Any specific special people that you want to share love to?
Oh man, so when you when you mentioned that, I mean, you mentioned that there were like accounts that I've been inspired by, or yeah, as you said, to kind of recommend. That is, I think, what came to mind to me as I was just sharing that advice of like the community, is everyone in a
Mm.
way. It's weird to say, but to follow people back, to write to people, to respond to comments, and respond to direct messages when people are talking to you, things like that. But if there were like a few channels that really stood out to me, especially someone that was new and just getting into things, to learn from, I would say I want to give a shout out to Reggie Collects over on YouTube. He's YouTube and Instagram. His name is Reggie Collects. And Comics with Bueller. He also has been doing some really great things on his channel. And John, and I wanted to say John too. John's Comics with Kids, who I've had the X-Men show with. Those three, the number one, the work ethic that they put into what they do, is very inspiring, and to see them go at it. I mean, you say I put out content, these guys put out content. These guys put out a lot of content, and really good quality content. But they've been there since the beginning for me, to where I've watched their channels grow. I've watched their YouTube channels grow. Reggie puts out some amazing how-to tips. He is very smart in a lot of the things that he teaches. So just the educational side of things, I recommend following him. He's been doing it for years now, 3 years now, I think. Comics with Bueller, he has a show every Monday that he talks about. He asks a question the week prior. It's like Wednesday, the new comic book days for Wednesday. He puts a question in in his video that people leave comments to, and he reads those comments on the following Monday. And Jen, I don't know if you've checked this show out, but I think you'd really like it, because there are a lot of subjects, some touchy subjects that they talk about. It's him and his friend Bob, and they read comments. They read, and they're very, going back to what we were talking about, being open-minded to everyone's answers, and to kind of either agree or disagree respectfully. They share their own opinions, but it's really cool to hear what the community has to say as well. So anyways, he has a lot of other content as well, but Bueller, I love that show that he does. And then John is just a great guy. He's just one of my best friends in this community that I've met, and he's taught me a ton, including stuff on StreamYard and things like that, and how to do certain things. So he's just been a great guy all around, and a community member as well, because all three of these guys, they shout people out, they recommend pages and things like that. If I had to pick three, it'd be those three, but it's hard to even choose, because I just want to tell everybody to follow everybody. Everybody should be following you, Jen. Everybody should be following you, because you are amazing with everything that you do. You inspire me to do more. I love that you put your opinions out there in a strong and respectful way, and you communicate with this community in a way that is, again, fair. But also you are sharing what you believe, and that shows a strong part of you, and I respect that from you. So for people who are new here, and this is towards the end where you'll also say, make sure you like and subscribe to Jen's channel, because she is kicking this thing off. And Jen, I know you're gonna have a lot more shows like this coming up, so hopefully the people in the chat and anybody in the replay that catch this will make sure to do that stuff. But yeah, those are it. And for me, I'm on Instagram and YouTube. No Good Comics is my thing. I live on Instagram. I'm an Instagrammer at heart. I am trying to be more involved with YouTube, but a lot of that is because of the community. I'm inspired by the community, so that's why I'm in this. So if you guys are looking for me, those two platforms are where I'm at.
Yes, and I strongly encourage everyone to follow Justin, because he's one of my favorite people on here. A very great mentor. Are very open to share all of his tips and tricks. And like he said a while ago, we send each other like novels, of like stuff when we talk about each other. He's very friendly, and that's why I really wanted him on this channel. So Justin, thank you very much for being here. It was very nice to do a first live. Thank you everyone who participated in the comments. That was awesome. I feel very lucky to have everyone who participated like this and watch fully the video and send comments and everything. So let me practice. So don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, my channel and Justin's channel, which is No Good Comics. I am on Instagram and YouTube under Life of a Geeky Mind. Yeah, so thank you very much for participating, Justin.
That was great.
Did I success, or was this successful?
You nailed it. You nailed it. It was a great job.
Yes.
Great job. You've been doing this longer than I think you have. Thank you again, Jen. I appreciate you having me on. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Appreciate everybody, whether I know you or I have not met you yet. You guys are all great for hanging out, and I hope you had a good time hearing me ramble for a while. But Jen, again, thank you so much. I love this platform. I love what you're doing because as how I am, you're getting to introduce more people to the community, and that's what this is all about. So I look forward to more projects that you do and more things that you do, and hopefully you and I do more collaborations down the road, which I'm sure we will. So
100%.
thank you again. I appreciate you having me on here.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. So I will end by wishing you all a very, very great day and lots of good comics read. So see you next time.
See you guys.